At 2 in the morning, I stood in my driveway in my pajamas and watched 12 people pour out of my luxury Airbnb like it was a college party house. 12 people. The reservation had been for 2. And that was not even close to the worst thing I discovered that night. Let me tell you about the house first. Because you need to understand what this place meant to me before you can understand why what happened cut as deep as it did. The lake house had been in my family for 22 years. My parents bought it the summer I turned 9, a worn-down craftsman on the edge of Lake Carver, with a sagging porch and a leaky roof and bones that my father said were worth saving. We spent 3 summers fixing it up as a family. My dad relayed the deck boards himself. My mother painted every room a different shade of blue. My brother and I stained the dock, badly, and my father made us do it again. By the time I was 12, it was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. We went every summer until I left for college. Then my parents retired and moved south, and the lake house sat mostly empty, and they offered it to me. I was 31, newly divorced, in that particular raw state of trying to rebuild a life that had come apart at the seams. I took it. I spent a year putting another layer of love into it. New kitchen appliances. A renovated bathroom. A fire pit by the water's edge. String lights across the back porch. A kayak rack. A hammock between 2 pine trees that had been growing there since before I was born. I listed it on Airbnb not because I needed the money, I have a good job as a marketing director, but because I hated the idea of it sitting empty. My parents had built that house to be lived in, to be full of sound and laughter and the particular messiness of people enjoying themselves. Keeping it locked and silent felt like a betrayal of everything they'd put into it. So I listed it. Carefully. I wrote the description myself, with pictures I took on a golden October morning. I set rules that I thought were thorough. No smoking. No pets. No parties. Maximum occupancy, 6 guests. I had hosted maybe 15 groups over 2 years. Families, mostly. A couple of anniversary trips. A group of women on a girls' weekend who left the place cleaner than they'd found it and a handwritten thank you note on the kitchen counter that I still have in a drawer. I had never had a serious problem. Until Kelsey. Kelsey booked the house on a Thursday for the following weekend. 2 guests, Friday to Sunday. Her message was friendly and brief, a quick getaway with her partner, she said. She'd read all the rules and understood them completely. Her profile had 3 reviews, all positive. She had a verified ID. She sent a cheerful confirmation message when I approved the booking. I had no reason to think twice. On Friday afternoon, I got an automated check-in notification. The smart lock had been accessed at 3:47 p.m. Right on schedule. I was at work. I sent the standard welcome message. She responded immediately with a smiley face and told me the house was absolutely gorgeous. I went home. Made dinner. Went to bed. At 11:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was my neighbor, Carol. Carol lives in the only other house on our road, about a quarter mile from the lake house. She is 73 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and she has the particular alertness of someone who spent 40 years managing rooms full of children and still misses nothing. Her text said, "There are a lot of cars at your place. Thought you should know." I sat up in bed. My heart did something cold and deliberate in my chest. I texted back, "How many is a lot?" "Carol, I counted 7 when I drove by. Could be more in the back. And it sounds like a party." I was out of bed before I finished reading the message. I live 40 minutes from the lake house. It was almost midnight. I got dressed in whatever my hands found first, pajama pants, a sweatshirt, sneakers, and I got in my car. I want to describe those 40 minutes honestly. Because I've seen posts where people talk about doing things like this and they make it sound clean and decisive, like they knew exactly what they were going to do the whole way there. I didn't. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not with rage, with something worse than rage. With grief, almost. Because I already knew, in the way you know things before you have all the facts, that something I loved had been treated like it didn't matter. That someone had looked at my family's house, the porch my father built, the dock my brother and I stained twice, and seen nothing but a venue. I also knew, somewhere under the grief, that I was angry enough to do something about it. I called my friend Diane on the drive. She answered on the third ring, groggy. Naomi? It's midnight. I need you to talk to me while I drive, I said. Someone is having a party at the lake house. A pause. Then, fully awake, how many people? At least 12. Probably more. Oh no. Oh, Naomi. I need you to talk to me, I said again. So I don't do anything stupid. Okay, she said. I'm here. Talk me through what you know. She stayed on the phone for the entire 40 minutes. She asked questions. She kept me focused on facts instead of feelings. She reminded me, for separate times, that the Airbnb guest protection policies were on my side if I documented everything. She's a very good friend. I turned onto our road at 12:52 a.m. Carol had not exaggerated. There were 9 cars parked along the driveway and onto the grass, including 2 that were partially blocking the road itself. The lake house, which I had left with its usual quiet beauty, was blazing with light from every window. I could hear music from the car. I parked behind the line of cars and sat there for a moment. Document everything first, Diane had said. Don't go in until you've documented. I took out my phone. I photographed the cars. I took a video, slowly, showing the number of vehicles, the blocked road, the lights, the sound. I noted the time in my video, 12:54 a.m., Saturday morning, less than 10 hours after check-in. Then I got out of the car. The front door was unlocked. Not just unlocked, slightly open, the way doors get when people stop caring about them because there are too many people coming in and out. I pushed it open. The living room, my living room, with its restored wood floors and the blue throw pillows my mother had chosen and the framed watercolor of the lake that had hung above the fireplace for 15 years, was full of people I had never seen in my life. Someone had moved all the furniture. The couch was pushed against one wall. There was a folding table set up, not mine, with bottles on it. Someone had hung a banner on the wall. A banner. With a name on it. Happy 30th, Kelsey. This was not a quiet weekend getaway with a partner. This was a birthday party. A full, catered, yes, I saw the catering boxes in the corner, rented venue-style birthday party in my family's lake house, booked for 2 people at the price of a 2-person stay. I stood in my own living room in my pajama pants and I counted heads. 15 people. 15. Nobody noticed me for almost a full minute. Then a young woman with a plastic cup and a sequined birthday sash turned around and stopped. Oh, she said. Hi, I said. My voice was very calm. I was proud of it later. I'm Naomi. I own this house. The music didn't stop, whoever controlled it hadn't noticed. But the people nearest to me had, and there was a ripple effect of sudden stillness moving outward from where I stood. A woman pushed through from the kitchen side. She was in her late 20s, dark hair, wearing an expression that was cycling rapidly between surprise and something that wanted to be defensiveness. You must be Kelsey, I said. Yes. I didn't. She looked around like the room might help her. We're just having a small. There are 15 people in my house, I said. The reservation was for 2. The maximum occupancy on this listing is 6 and it is listed, very specifically, in the house rules. I paused. This is also a no-party property. That rule is also listed specifically. Multiple times. Her expression had settled on something that was trying to be apologetic but hadn't quite gotten there. "It's just my birthday," she said. "We weren't going to." "Kelsey," I said. "I'd like everyone to leave." She stared at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "Everyone who is not you and one other person needs to leave now," I said. "And then I'd like to talk to you about the condition of my home." Here is where it got interesting. Because Kelsey, rather than accepting the situation with the grace it called for, looked at me with an expression that shifted into something that I can only describe as entitled calculation. "We've already paid," she said. "The reservation is confirmed through Sunday." "I'm the host," I said. "I have the right to cancel a reservation for violations of house rules. This is a significant violation of multiple house rules." "You can't just," she stopped. "Start it again. You'll have to refund us if you cancel." And here is the thing. Here is the moment where I could have gotten flustered or backed down or let her reframe this like I was the unreasonable one. I did not. Because in the car, for 40 minutes, Diane had walked me through exactly this. Under Airbnb's host cancellation policies for rule violations, I said, "I am within my rights to cancel this reservation and I am not required to issue a full refund when the cancellation is due to a documented violation of house rules." I held up my phone. "I have video documentation of the vehicles, the guests, the time of arrival, and the current state of this property. Taken before I entered." Kelsey looked at my phone. Something in her face changed. "You can't," she started again, but softer this time. "I can," I said. "And I am. You have 30 minutes to gather your guests and your belongings. Anything left after that will be stored, and retrieval will be coordinated through Airbnb's Resolution Center." I turned away from her and walked to the fireplace. I took down the banner that had been hung on my wall, carefully, because the watercolor behind it was irreplaceable, and I folded it and set it on the displaced couch. Then I opened my Airbnb host app and I began the cancellation process. 30 minutes is not a long time to move 15 people out of a party. But people move surprisingly efficiently when the owner of the property is standing in the living room with her phone out and an expression that communicates, without any additional words, that she is fully prepared to call local authorities if necessary. They filed out. In groups of 3s and 4s, some sheepish, some annoyed, one young man who caught my eye on his way out and said, genuinely, "I didn't know it wasn't a venue rental." "I'm really sorry." That one I believed. Kelsey stayed until last. She stood in the doorway when everyone else had gone and she looked at me with an expression that had finally, after 45 minutes of watching her options evaporate, arrived at something like genuine remorse. "I should have been honest about what we were doing," she said. "Yes," I said. "You should have. The house is, nothing is broken. Everyone was being careful." "Kelsey," I said. And I made my voice as level and final as I knew how. "I want you to look around this room." She did. "This house belonged to my parents," I said. "My father built that deck. My mother chose those throw pillows. There is a watercolor above the fireplace that my daughter painted when she was 8 years old and gave to me as a birthday gift." I paused. "This is not a venue. This is not a commercial event space. This is my family's home. I share it with guests because I love what it was built for, people coming together, enjoying it with care and respect." I looked at her steadily. "You looked at this house and saw a cheap party venue. I need you to understand what that felt like from where I'm standing." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "I'm sorry." And this time, I believed that too. "Good night, Kelsey," I said. She left. I closed the door and stood in the quiet house. The furniture was displaced. There were cups on the counters. The kitchen had a fine layer of catering chaos across the surfaces. Someone had left a sweater on the back of a chair. But nothing was broken. The watercolor was intact. The wood floors were unscratched. The fireplace was unlit, they'd had the sense not to touch it. I stood in the kitchen and I breathed. Then I filled a bucket with warm soapy water and I started cleaning my mother's house. I want to tell you about two things that happened in the days after. Because this story has a second chapter that I didn't see coming. The first thing, Airbnb's response. I submitted my documentation, the videos, the timestamps, the photograph evidence of the overcrowding, and I filed a claim through their resolution center. I was not optimistic. I had heard stories of hosts getting tangled in policy disputes that went nowhere. What happened instead was this: within 48 hours, I received a response from an Airbnb case manager named Troy. Troy had reviewed my documentation and agreed that the violations were clear and significant. The cancellation was upheld. The refund Kelsey received was partial, reflecting the portion of the stay before the violation was discovered, and the remainder was released to me. Additionally, and this was the part one hadn't expected, Troy flagged Kelsey's account for a serious violation on her guest profile. She would be required to go through additional verification before booking again. 3-night minimum holds on any property she booked in the future. It wasn't everything. It didn't give me back the Friday night I'd lost. But it was something. Troy also said something at the end of his message that I wrote in my journal that night. Thank you for handling this with such composure and thorough documentation. A lot of hosts panic in these situations. The documentation you provided made this resolution straightforward. We appreciate hosts like you. I held on to that. The second thing that happened was more personal and more unexpected. On Tuesday, 3 days after the party, I received a message through Airbnb. It was from Kelsey. I almost didn't read it. My finger hovered over the archive button. Then something made me open it. It was long. 3 paragraphs. She apologized again, more thoroughly this time, without the defensiveness of the doorway. She said she had known it was against the rules and had told herself it would be fine, that the house was so big nobody would know, that she'd be careful. She said she had not thought about what it meant, that it was someone's family property, not a commercial venue. She said she hadn't thought about me as a person at all, really, and that standing in that living room listening to me describe my parents and the watercolor had been a moment she couldn't stop thinking about. She said, I've been trying to save money for my own place for 2 years and I know how much it means to have something that's yours. I treated yours like it didn't matter and I'm ashamed of that. I read that message 3 times. Then I wrote back. 2 sentences. Thank you for writing this. I hope your birthday was worth celebrating, even if the night didn't go as planned. I meant both of those things. I want to tell you about the weekend after. I drove back to the lake house on Saturday morning. Not for any practical reason, the property was fine, Troy had confirmed everything was resolved, the next reservation wasn't for 2 weeks. I went back because I needed to. I made coffee in my mother's kitchen. I sat on the porch my father had built and I watched the lake. It was October by then, the trees were doing that thing they do at the lake, the reds and oranges reflecting on the water until you can't tell where the trees end and the lake begins. My daughter, who is 14 and lives with me half the time, had come with me. She sat in the hammock between the pine trees with a book, and I watched her for a while, this child who had grown up coming to this lake the way I had grown up coming to this lake, and I thought about inheritance. Not the legal kind. The other kind. The kind where a place holds everything that happened in it. Every summer morning. Every argument and reconciliation. Every meal and fire and swimming race and quiet evening on the dock. That is what Kelsey had almost touched. That is what the banner on the wall had almost reached. But hadn't. Because I had driven 40 minutes in my pajamas at midnight and taken it back. I updated my Airbnb listing the week after. New photos, I hired a photographer this time, someone who could capture the light on the water the way I saw it. New description. More detailed. More personal. I actually wrote about my parents buying the property, about what the house meant. About the guests who had left thank you notes. And I added one line to the rules section, at the top, before anything else. This is a family home, loved for over 20 years. Please treat it the way you would want someone to treat yours. My first booking after that went up was a couple celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. They left a review that was 5 paragraphs long. They described the morning light on the water and the sound of the pines in the wind and the way it felt to sit on the porch with coffee and feel like the world had gone quiet. They said it felt like someone's home. That was exactly right. That was exactly the point. Here is what I want to say to anyone listening who has had something they built or something they love treated carelessly. There is a version of this story where I don't drive to the lake house. Where I call Airbnb in the morning, file a report, accept the insurance claim, and let strangers have one more night in my mother's house because confrontation feels too hard. I almost was that version. But somewhere on that 40-minute drive, in the dark, with Diane's voice keeping me grounded, I made a different decision. I decided that some things are worth protecting in real time. Not just through channels and forms and customer service tickets. In person. With your body in the room, making it clear that this place matters and you are not afraid to say so. The rules I had written were not enough. Documentation was important, vital, actually, but documentation is the aftermath. The actual protection happened when I walked through my own front door at midnight and said, enough. There is something powerful in that word. Enough. You are allowed to say it about your things. About your space. About your work and your time and the places that hold the pieces of your life that matter most. You do not have to wait for someone else's process to protect what you love. You are allowed to protect it yourself. My daughter painted me a new watercolor last summer. Same subject, the lake at dusk, that particular shade of blue just before the light goes. She gave it to me in a frame she'd picked out herself, tied with a ribbon. It hangs next to the original one above the fireplace now. I told her the story of the party night, the banner, the moment I took it down. She listened with the focused seriousness she brings to things she finds important. Then she said, "Good. You should have kicked them out sooner." I laughed. Properly, the way you laugh when something is truer than it is funny. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe I should have." "But you did it," she said. "That's what matters." She went back to her book. And I sat on my father's porch, and I looked at my lake, and I agreed.